The Dixie Mafia, Georgia. Let's get into it. August 7th, 1967. A quiet morning in Jackson County, Georgia. Prosecutor Floyd Hoard walks towards his black Ford Galaxy. He opens the door. He turns the key. Then 12 sticks of dynamite wired to his ignition transform a quiet Northeast Georgia community into the center of one of the biggest organized crimes investigations in the state history. For many people, this is where the Georgia Dixie Mafia got on the map. But it didn't begin with a car bomb. It began years earlier. To understand why Jackson County reached this point, we have to go back a little further. Not 1 year, not 2 years, 8 years. Back to 1959. In 1959, lawmakers weren't asking for another routine audit. They were asking for something different. An annual audit of Jackson County physical affairs performed by a non-resident certified public accountant. Not someone from Jackson County, someone from outside of it. The audit would become public and it would be available to the grand jury. Now, think about that. If lawmakers believed an outsider had to examine Jackson County books, the obvious question becomes what was happening inside Jackson County that made them lose confidence in local oversight? Unfortunately, I haven't located the original audit, but everything that happened afterwards suggests the audit was only the beginning. And one more thing. I wonder if this audit cost taxpayers $11,580. 1 year later, Jackson County voters faced the decision: incumbent Sheriff John B. Brooks or challenger L.G. Snuffy Perry. Perry promised to clean up the county. He warned voters he'd be opposed by the bootleggers, the money, and what he called the old political rings. The voters, they chose Brooks. 3 years later, everything changed. Sheriff John Brooks became the subject of a state investigation involving an automobile theft ring. Rather than tell you, let's listen to what Sheriff Brooks had to say.
These cars were stolen.
We got to prove ownership, and we had no way to prove ownership except by serial numbers in our file. But now we've got people that identified their property by other identifications other than the numbers.
Would you say that $1 million was a fair figure?
I haven't figured that. I just wouldn't know.
Sheriff John B. Brooks of Jackson County. Sheriff Brooks, would you tell me when you first learned of this auto theft ring?
Well, sometime in September of '62.
And how did you learn about it?
Well, there got been too many cars coming up in the county. We got to pick them up and scattered all over the county, different places, and different informers told us about it.
Could you tell us of one specific incident like this?
Well, for instance, we'd find their stripped car at Redstone District, the house down there with 3 cars being stripped out and had to go somewhere. There's no abandoned house. And different places over the county got lots of wooded and country and lots of vacant houses in the county, and the folks move in them, and there'd be, first thing you know, there'd be lots of traffic, and you go in and find a bunch of cut up cars and parts of cars, nothing we could identify. But we have had other cars besides this identified, some that out of Macon and other places, by not numbers, but by identification by the person, and we have recovered, I guess, 30 or 40 cars by number and turned them to the owners.
Do you folks plan prosecuting any of these cases here in Jackson County?
The prosecution is left up to the Solicitor General, and we are working with the solicitor in the court on it.
3 years after winning the re-election, Sheriff Brooks was gone. His departure left one of the most powerful officers in Jackson County wide open. The man who had lost to the sheriff in this race in 1960, L.G. Snuffy Perry, returned for another shot. And this time, the voters chose him. In early 1965, Jackson County had a new sheriff, and he wasn't walking into office alone. A new Solicitor General, Floyd Hoard, has also taken office. Judge Mark Donahue, who was now on the bench. On paper, it looked like Jackson County had entered a new era. A new sheriff, a new prosecutor, a new judge, all arriving at the time when the county was already under increasing scrutiny. But there was one problem. Long before any one of these men took office, someone else had already built the empire inside Jackson County. Andrew Clifford Park. aka Cliff Park. And by the time Floyd Hoard had took office, Park had spent decades appearing in court records involving liquor offenses and bootlegging investigations. Newspapers describe him as the kingpin of one of North Georgia's largest bootlegging operations. According to investigations, there was no such thing as discretion. GBI agent Ronnie Angel later testified there was nothing hidden about the thing. You just walked in and asked for liquor. This wasn't a hidden enterprise, it was operating in plain sight. And by 1964, a new prosecutor takes office, Floyd Hoard. And unlike many prosecutors, Hoard didn't ease into the job. He immediately launched aggressive raids against bootlegging operations. He pursued automobile theft investigations, and within months, he had secured 76 automobile theft indictments. State revenue agents, the GBI, the State Auto Theft Squad, everybody was suddenly found themselves working inside of Jackson County. But Hoard wasn't working alone. You had Judge Mark Donahue, who was reshaping the courtroom itself. New jury commissioners, new jury lists, additional weeks of court. The system wasn't simply prosecuting more cases, it was changing how justice operated inside Jackson County. And I want you to remember that name, Judge Mark Donahue. We'll come back to him later. And at the same time, Sheriff Perry found himself under increasing pressure. Court orders, bootlegging raids, padlock orders, state investigators, questions about enforcement. Jackson County wasn't getting quieter, it was getting louder. Now look at your screen. A state ordered audit, a new sheriff, a convicted former sheriff, a new prosecutor, a reform-minded judge, aggressive raid, auto theft investigation, bootlegging investigation, the GBI, state revenue agents, one of Georgia's most powerful bootlegging organizations, and by 1967, everything had collided. And after the pressure continued to build, Governor Lester Maddox announced what he called a war on crime in Jackson County. He directed the GBI and State Revenue Department to intensify their efforts. The state of Georgia had arrived. The investigation had become bigger than one county, bigger than one prosecutor, bigger than one sheriff, and only days later,